The most powerful man in Rome did one thing every morning. Wait for it. The most powerful man alive stood before a homeless philosopher and asked what he desired. Though he belonged to a different school, the philosopher Diogenes embodied an idea the Stoics deeply admired, that true freedom comes from needing nothing. Diogenes lived in extreme simplicity, owning almost nothing and sleeping in a large ceramic jar in the marketplace. He had thrown away even his drinking cup after seeing a child drink from cupped hands, deciding the child had outtaught him in simplicity. One day, the most powerful man in the world came to visit him. Alexander the Great, conqueror of nations, had heard of this strange philosopher and wanted to meet him. But the real lesson is what he did next. Alexander found Diogenes lying in the sun, relaxing. The young conqueror, who could grant any wish, stood over him and offered to give him anything he desired. Name it, and it was his. The crowd held its breath. Here was a homeless man being offered the resources of an empire. Diogenes looked up at Alexander and asked him only to step aside, because he was blocking the sunlight. That was his entire request. Move out of my sun. Alexander's companions laughed at the beggar, but Alexander himself was deeply moved. He reportedly said that if he were not Alexander, he would wish to be Diogenes. The man who owned the world envied the man who wanted nothing, because the man who wants nothing cannot be controlled, bribed, or threatened by anyone. Send this to someone who needs it today, and follow for daily Stoic wisdom. The Stoics knew something the rest of the world forgot. The disaster that built an empire of the mind. Zeno of Citium was a wealthy merchant sailing from Phoenicia to Piraeus when a storm destroyed his ship and everything on it. He survived. His cargo, his money, his plans for the future, all gone. He swam to shore in Athens with nothing. He wandered into a bookshop, soaking wet, looking for something to do while he figured out what came next. The bookseller was reading aloud from a text about Socrates. Zeno sat down and listened. He did not leave for hours. When he finally stood up, he asked the bookseller, "Where can I find men like this?" The bookseller pointed down the street. Zeno walked in that direction and never looked back. Zeno spent the next decade studying, teaching, and developing what would become Stoicism. He gathered followers in a painted porch, a stoa, in the Athenian marketplace. His students became some of the most influential thinkers in history. The philosophy he built from nothing would eventually guide Marcus Aurelius, reshape Roman law, influence Christianity, and echo through the writings of everyone from Montaigne to Nelson Mandela. When people asked Zeno about the shipwreck, he smiled. He said the sea did him a great favor. He had traded perishable cargo for something that could never sink. He had traded wealth for wisdom. And unlike his ship, that was something no storm could ever take from him. Follow for a daily mindset upgrade every single day. The Stoics knew something the rest of the world forgot. He was one of the richest men in Rome and he called his life a waste. Seneca was one of the wealthiest men in ancient Rome. He advised emperors, wrote philosophy, and lived in luxury most people could never imagine. And then one day he sat down and wrote the most honest letter of his life. He wrote it to himself. He said, "We are not given a short life. We are given a long life and we waste it. We wait for the right moment to start living. We say, when I have more money. When the children are grown. When I retire. And then one day we are old, and we look back, and we realize the life we were saving for later never actually arrived." Seneca wrote that most people guard their money carefully. They lock it up, they count it, they protect it fiercely. But they throw away their time like it costs nothing. They give it to anyone who asks. They spend it on things that do not matter. Then they wonder why they feel empty. He wrote, "Begin at once to live." This sounds obvious. But Seneca himself admitted he had spent decades not doing it. He was writing the letter as a confession, not as advice. He knew how easy it was to study wisdom and still not practice it. He spent the rest of his life trying to close that gap. His letters survived 2,000 years. Because the problem he described never went away. Follow for a daily mindset upgrade every single day. The Stoics knew something the rest of the world forgot. 2,000 years ago they figured out something psychology is only now proving. The Stoics taught something that sounded strange for its time. They said, "You are not your thoughts. You are the one observing your thoughts." When Marcus Aurelius felt anger rising, he did not believe the anger was him. He believed it was a visitor. Something passing through. He would name it. Watch it. And then decide whether to act on it or let it pass. This was not suppression. It was the opposite. Full awareness without identification. He wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself but to your own estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." Modern cognitive behavioral therapy, developed in the 1960s, is built almost entirely on this insight. Therapists teach patients to observe their thoughts rather than become them. To question the stories their minds tell them. To recognize that a thought is not a fact. Researchers who compared Stoic texts to modern CBT frameworks found the overlap was so significant that some called CBT applied Stoicism. The Stoics did not have brain scans or clinical trials. They had centuries of careful observation of how human beings actually work. And what they found, sitting in painted porches and prison cells and royal tents, was the same thing modern science is now confirming. The mind that watches itself is the mind that is hardest to break. Follow for a daily mindset upgrade every single day. The Stoics knew something the rest of the world forgot. He imagined looking at his problems from space. Marcus Aurelius had a technique he called the view from above. When a problem felt overwhelming, when politics felt suffocating, when the pressure of running an empire threatened to crush him, he would close his eyes and imagine rising. First above the room. Then above the city. Then above the empire. Then above the earth itself, until everything below looked like a tiny, spinning point of light surrounded by infinite darkness. From that distance, wars looked like arguments between insects. Empires looked like temporary patterns in dust. The thing he had been losing sleep over could no longer even be seen. He wrote about this practice repeatedly in his private journal. He said, "How many a Chrysippus, how many a Socrates, how many an Epictetus have time already swallowed up? Think about the vast abyss of time behind you and before you. In that context, what is the thing you are worried about right now?" He was not telling himself his problems did not matter. He was giving himself perspective before deciding how to act. Astronauts who have seen the Earth from orbit describe something similar. They call it the overview effect. A sudden, overwhelming understanding that the borders, the arguments, the things people fight over, all of it becomes almost incomprehensible from far enough away. Marcus Aurelius figured out how to experience that without leaving the room. Follow for a daily mindset upgrade every single day. The Stoics knew something the rest of the world forgot. Even Stoics knew how to enjoy themselves. People think of Stoics as serious, cold, unfeeling. The history tells a different story. Chrysippus was one of the greatest Stoic philosophers who ever lived. He wrote over 700 books. He debated, he taught, he argued with anyone who would engage him. And he had a sense of humor that surprised everyone who met him. At a festival outside Athens, he watched a donkey eating figs that had been left as an offering. The donkey walked over and began eating them methodically, one by one, clearly enjoying itself. Chrysippus found this so funny he could not stop laughing. According to ancient accounts, Chrysippus laughed so hard at the sight of that donkey eating those sacred figs that he collapsed. He kept saying, "Now give the donkey some wine to wash down the figs." And he laughed again. And again. The laughter would not stop. He died right there, reportedly still smiling. People told this story for centuries not to mock him but because it revealed something important. The Stoics were not trying to become statues. They were not trying to feel nothing. They were trying to feel everything fully and still remain unshakable when it mattered. Chrysippus mastered that completely. He just also found donkeys eating figs to be extremely funny. Perhaps that was the point. A philosophy that cannot laugh at a donkey is not a philosophy worth living. Follow for a daily mindset upgrade every single day. Easy choices, hard life. Hard choices, easy life. Every area of life offers the same trade. You can choose the hard thing now and have an easier life later. Or you can choose the easy thing now and face a harder life later. Exercise is hard now. Chronic illness is hard later. Saving money is hard now. Financial stress is hard later. Difficult conversations are hard now. Resentment and broken relationships are hard later. You do not get to choose whether your life contains hard things. You only get to choose when. The people who seem to have easy, successful lives are almost always the ones who chose hard earlier. They did the work when they did not have to, when no one would have blamed them for resting. They had the conversation before it became a conflict. They saved before the emergency arrived. Their present ease is the delayed reward for past difficulty. Comfort now versus comfort later is a transaction. Most people take the comfort now and do not realize they are paying interest on it for years. Follow Rise Daily for a new mindset upgrade every single day.